Every morning at 0600 sharp, she appeared at the Naval Special Warfare Training Center in Imperial Beach. The SEALs called her Range Girl, just another support staff member who maintained equipment and set up targets. They had no idea that the quiet woman they barely noticed possessed skills that would leave the most elite warriors in the world speechless. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Samantha Blake looked exactly like what you'd expect from range support personnel. At 38, she wore the standard-issue Navy utilities that hung loose on her compact frame, making her appear smaller than her actual 5'6" height. Her dark brown hair was always pulled back in a regulation bun, secured with the kind of plain black elastic that screamed government-issue practicality. Wire-rimmed glasses perched on her nose, giving her the appearance of someone more comfortable behind a desk than on a military training range. She moved with careful, measured steps across the training grounds, carrying her equipment checklist on a weathered clipboard that never left her side. Her voice, when she spoke at all, was soft and deferential, the kind of tone that suggested she was trying very hard not to draw attention to herself. Most days, the SEAL trainees and instructors barely registered her presence, treating her like part of the furniture that kept their world running smoothly. The Naval Special Warfare Training Center was a crucible where America's most elite warriors were forged. Here, candidates endured the legendary Hell Week, learning to push their bodies and minds beyond what they thought possible. The facility buzzed with constant activity, physical training, weapons instruction, tactical exercises, and the kind of high-intensity drills that separated SEALs from ordinary soldiers. Sam's official duties seemed mundane by comparison. She arrived before dawn to inspect firing range equipment, ensuring that weapons, ammunition, and safety systems were functioning properly. She set up targets at precise distances, checked communications equipment, and maintained the sophisticated training simulators that helped prepare SEALs for real-world missions. During training exercises, she remained in the background, clipboard in hand, making notes about equipment performance and safety protocols. The trainees barely acknowledged her existence. When they did notice her, it was usually with the kind of casual dismissal that people reserve for service staff. "Hey, range girl, we need more targets at the 300-meter line," seaman recruit Brad Fletcher would call out, not bothering to look in her direction. Fletcher was everything Sam appeared not to be: young, cocky, built like a linebacker, and absolutely convinced of his own superiority. "Sam," she would correct quietly, but Fletcher never seemed to hear her actual name. To him, and to most of the others, she was just Range Girl, a generic support person whose primary value was keeping their training environment operational. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Cross was even worse. At 35, Cross was a veteran SEAL officer with multiple combat deployments and the kind of confidence that came from knowing he was among the best warriors in the world. He had piercing blue eyes, a square jaw that looked like it belonged on a recruitment poster, and the bearing of someone accustomed to absolute authority. "The civilian support staff needs to stay clear of the active training areas," Cross would announce whenever Sam appeared near the firing line, speaking about her as if she weren't standing right there. "We don't need distractions during live-fire exercises." Sam would simply nod and move to wherever Cross indicated, never arguing, never showing any sign that his dismissive tone bothered her. She'd position herself at the equipment monitoring station, watching the training exercises through the ballistic glass that separated support personnel from active training areas. But if anyone had been paying closer attention, they might have noticed things that didn't quite add up. Like the way Sam's equipment inspections weren't random checks. She moved through the range with a systematic precision that covered every angle, every potential firing position, every possible line of sight. Her routine maintenance gave her access to communications equipment, weapon systems, and tactical layouts that most support personnel never need to understand. They might have noticed that her civilian utilities, while regulation, were made from a slightly different fabric than standard issue. A ripstop material that was more durable and tactical than typical support staff clothing. Her glasses weren't just prescription lenses, but had an almost imperceptible coating that suggested ballistic rating. Her boots, while appearing standard, had the kind of aggressive tread pattern favored by people who needed reliable footing in combat situations. Most telling of all, they might have realized that Sam always seemed to position herself with perfect situational awareness. During live fire exercises, she never appeared startled by gunfire. During tactical drills, she instinctively moved to positions that provided optimal overwatch of the entire training area. When equipment malfunctioned or emergencies arose, she was always exactly where she needed to be to provide immediate assistance. But the SEALs saw what they expected to see: a quiet support person who did her job competently and stayed out of their way. They had no idea that every day for the past 8 months, they were being observed and evaluated by someone whose training exceeded most of their own. Chief Petty Officer Carlos Vargas was different from the others. At 42, he'd been a SEAL for nearly 20 years, long enough to develop the kind of instincts that kept operators alive in hostile environments. He'd noticed Sam from her first day at the facility, not because she stood out, but because she didn't. "There's something about the new range support," he mentioned to Master Chief Gary Webb during a break between training sessions. "She's too controlled." Webb, a grizzled veteran with silver hair and the kind of weathered face that spoke of decades in special operations, looked across the range where Sam was methodically checking target mechanisms. "What do you mean?" "Watch how she moves," Vargas said. "Most civilians, especially women, show some kind of nervousness around this much firepower and testosterone. She doesn't. She moves like she belongs here." Webb studied Sam for a few moments, taking in her posture, her movements, the way she held her shoulders. Could be former military. Plenty of veterans take civilian jobs on base. "Maybe," Vargas agreed, but something in his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. "But there's something else. The way she positions herself during exercises, it's not random. She's always where she'd have the best tactical overview of the situation." As if sensing their observation, Sam looked up from her work and nodded politely in their direction. For just a moment, Webb caught something in her eyes, a quick, professional assessment that cataloged their positions, equipment, and potential threat level before returning to the neutral, deferential expression she wore like a mask. "Interesting," Webb murmured. But before he could elaborate, Lieutenant Commander Cross's voice cut across the range. "Let's get this show moving, people. We've got live fire qualifications to complete, and I don't want to be here all day waiting for support staff to finish their housekeeping." Sam gathered her equipment and moved to her designated observation position, once again becoming invisible to most of the SEALs preparing for their training exercise. But Webb continued to watch her, his experienced eye noting details that others missed. The morning's training was routine. Marksmanship qualifications at various distances, tactical reload drills, and team coordination exercises. Sam remained at her station, clipboard in hand, seemingly focused on equipment monitoring and safety protocols. To most observers, she was exactly what she appeared to be: competent support personnel doing a necessary but unremarkable job. But beneath that carefully constructed facade, Samantha Blake was conducting an operation that none of them could have imagined. Every day for 8 months, she'd been gathering intelligence, documenting procedures, and building a comprehensive understanding of how the Naval Special Warfare Training Center operated. The question wasn't whether she was qualified to be there. The question was why someone with her level of training was content to remain invisible, allowing herself to be dismissed and underestimated by the very people she was sworn to protect. That answer would come soon enough, in a way that would shatter every assumption the SEALs had made about the quiet woman they'd barely noticed. But for now, Sam Blake continued her careful charade, watching and waiting for the right moment to reveal who she really was. The harassment began in earnest during Sam's second month at the facility. What had started as casual dismissal evolved into something more deliberate, more cruel. Seaman recruit Brad Fletcher seemed to take particular pleasure in making Sam's job as difficult as possible, and his behavior was beginning to influence the other trainees. "Yo, range girl, Fletcher's voice boomed across the training area as Sam was setting up precision targets for the afternoon's long-range marksmanship exercise. "You missed a spot over here." He pointed to an area she'd already cleaned twice, a smirk playing across his face as several other trainees gathered to watch the show. Fletcher was built like a small mountain, 6'4", 240 pounds of muscle earned through years of collegiate football before joining the Navy. His buzz-cut blonde hair and square jaw gave him the kind of all-American appearance that made him a natural leader among the younger trainees. Unfortunately, he used that influence to create an atmosphere of casual cruelty toward support staff. Preparing and narrating the story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Sam walked over to the area Fletcher had indicated, her movements as measured and controlled as always. She examined the ground carefully, though they both knew there was nothing to clean. "I don't see anything that needs attention, Seaman Recruit Fletcher," she said quietly. "Well, I do," Fletcher replied, deliberately kicking dirt and debris in her direction. "Better get on that, range girl. Can't have the area looking unprofessional when the real warriors are training." The laughter that followed was harsh and exclusionary. Several other trainees had stopped their equipment checks to watch Fletcher humiliate the civilian support worker. Sam simply nodded, retrieved her cleaning supplies, and began working on the mess Fletcher had deliberately created. "Think she's ever even held a weapon?" Petty Officer 3rd Class Danny Walsh whispered loudly enough for Sam to hear. Walsh was Fletcher's roommate and closest ally among the trainees, a wiry redhead from Boston with a sharp tongue and a mean streak that complemented Fletcher's bullying perfectly. "Probably jumps every time we fire," another trainee added, causing another round of laughter. Sam continued working, her face showing no reaction to their taunts. But Chief Vargas, observing from the instructor platform, noticed something the trainees didn't. When the laughter erupted, Sam's shoulders had tensed almost imperceptibly, and her cleaning movements had become more rigid, more controlled. It wasn't the reaction of someone who was hurt or embarrassed. It was the reaction of someone exercising considerable self-restraint. Lieutenant Commander Cross made things worse through his systematic exclusion of Sam from any meaningful interaction. During safety briefings, he would address qualified personnel only, making it clear that civilian support staff were expected to observe silently. When equipment issues arose, he would summon male technicians from other departments rather than consulting Sam, even when she was standing right there with the relevant expertise. The civilian needs to maintain appropriate distance from classified training procedures, Cross announced during one particularly intense combat simulation exercise. Sam had been monitoring communications equipment when Cross noticed her position gave her a clear view of the tactical exercise. "Sir, I'm just performing routine equipment maintenance," Sam replied, holding up her clipboard with its detailed inspection checklist. "Find somewhere else to perform it," Cross said dismissively. "These exercises are above your clearance level." The irony of that statement would have been laughable if she could have revealed the truth. Her actual clearance level was so far above Cross's that he wouldn't have been authorized to know it existed. But she simply nodded and moved to a different monitoring station, one that actually provided better tactical oversight of the exercise while appearing to comply with Cross's orders. Master Chief Webb had been watching these interactions with growing concern. At 54, he'd served in special operations long enough to recognize when someone was being unfairly targeted. But more troubling was his growing suspicion that there was more to Sam Blake than met the eye. "The way she handles the dismissal bothers me," he mentioned to Chief Vargas during their evening debrief. "Most civilians would either fight back or break down under that kind of treatment. She just adapts." "Adapts how?" Vargas asked. "She finds new positions that actually give her better observation points while appearing to comply with orders. That's not civilian thinking. That's tactical thinking."
Webb pulled out Sam's personnel file, which was surprisingly thin for someone in her position. Look at this. Standard background check, clean record, previous experience listed as various government positions. No details, no specifics, no real history. Vargas frowned as he examined the file. That's unusual. Most civilian hires have extensive employment histories. This reads like someone scrubbed it clean. Or like someone's whose real employment history is classified, Webb said quietly. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of Fletcher's voice rising in anger from the equipment storage area. Both instructors hurried to investigate, finding Fletcher berating Sam over some supposed equipment misplacement. "I told you to secure the night vision devices in the main armory," Fletcher said, his face red with fabricated indignation. "Now I can't find them anywhere."
Sam stood calmly beside the storage lockers, her clipboard in hand. "Seaman Recruit Fletcher, I logged all night vision equipment in the secondary storage area per the updated protocols. The log shows your signature acknowledging the new location." She held out the clipboard, pointing to Fletcher's own signature from 3 days earlier. Fletcher's face went even redder as he realized he'd forgotten about the protocol change he'd been briefed on and had signed off on. "Well, you should have reminded me," Fletcher stammered, grasping for some way to maintain his authority in front of the other trainees who had gathered to watch. "I did remind you, Seaman Recruit," Sam replied patiently, "during yesterday morning's equipment brief. The information is also posted on the duty board and included in the daily operational summary." Fletcher was trapped. He'd signed the protocols, been briefed on the changes, and had access to all the information he needed. His attempt to blame Sam for his own oversight had backfired completely, making him look incompetent in front of his peers. Just make sure it doesn't happen again," he mumbled, stalking away with as much dignity as he could muster. Webb and Vargas exchanged glances. Sam's response had been perfect, professional, documented, and unassailable. She'd made Fletcher look foolish without being disrespectful or confrontational. It was a masterclass in handling difficult personalities while maintaining professional standards. "That wasn't luck," Webb said quietly after Sam had returned to her duties. "That was someone who knows exactly how to navigate military bureaucracy and interpersonal conflicts. Someone with experience managing difficult subordinates," Vargas agreed. "The question is, where did a civilian support worker develop those skills?" The harassment campaign reached its peak during a particularly intense training week when the SEAL candidates were under maximum stress from physical and mental challenges. Fletcher, exhausted and frustrated by his own performance, decided to take out his aggression on the easiest target available. "Range girl," he bellowed across the mess hall during lunch, causing dozens of heads to turn. "My gear smells like it wasn't properly maintained. What kind of half-assed job are you doing over there?" The accusation was baseless. Sam's equipment maintenance was meticulous and well documented. But Fletcher wasn't interested in facts. He was interested in reasserting his dominance over someone he perceived as powerless. Sam looked up from her lunch, a simple sandwich eaten alone at a corner table, and met Fletcher's glare steadily. "Seaman Recruit Fletcher, all equipment maintenance is logged and inspected according to Navy standards. If you have specific concerns, I'd be happy to review the documentation with you." "I don't want documentation," Fletcher snarled, standing up and moving toward her table. "I want competent equipment maintenance. Maybe if you spent less time playing with clipboards and more time doing actual work." He let the insult hang in the air, waiting for Sam's response. The entire mess hall had gone quiet, everyone watching to see how the confrontation would play out. Fletcher was counting on Sam's continued passivity, expecting her to apologize or make excuses. Instead, Sam stood up slowly, her movements fluid and controlled. For the first time since anyone had known her, she looked directly at Fletcher without any trace of deference or submission. "Seaman Recruit Fletcher, I suggest you check your gear more carefully before making accusations about maintenance standards." There was something in her tone, a subtle authority that hadn't been there before, that made Fletcher hesitate.
For just a moment, he found himself looking at Sam Blake not as a harmless civilian, but as someone who might not be quite what she seemed. But the moment passed, and Fletcher's natural arrogance reasserted itself. "Don't tell me what to do, Range Girl. You work for us, remember?" Sam's response was quiet, but carried the weight of absolute certainty. "I work for the United States Navy, seaman recruit, just like you do." The distinction was subtle but significant, and several of the more experienced personnel in the mess hall caught it immediately. Sam hadn't positioned herself as subordinate to Fletcher or even to the SEAL program. She'd positioned herself as an equal servant of the same larger mission. Fletcher, however, missed the nuance entirely. He saw only defiance from someone he considered beneath his notice, and that defiance would soon lead to a confrontation that would change everything. The signs had been there from the beginning, but it took weeks for anyone to notice the patterns that revealed Sam Blake wasn't quite what she seemed. Her daily routine appeared mundane enough: equipment checks, target setup, safety monitoring. But those with the experience to look deeper began to see something else entirely. Chief Vargas was the first to document his observations systematically. During a quiet moment between training sessions, he pulled Master Chief Webb aside and shared what he'd been tracking. "Watch her morning inspection routine," Vargas said, nodding toward Sam as she moved through the range complex. "She's not just checking equipment randomly. Look at the pattern." Webb studied Sam's movements as she progressed through her checklist. She started at the main firing line, moved systematically through each firing position, then worked her way back through the observation areas and finally the equipment storage sections. At first glance, it appeared to be a thorough but standard inspection protocol. "I'm not seeing it," Webb admitted. "She's not just checking equipment," Vargas explained. "She's conducting a complete tactical assessment of the facility. Every position she inspects gives her visual coverage of potential approach routes, sight lines, and defensive positions. That's not maintenance, that's reconnaissance." Webb watched more carefully as Sam continued her routine. Vargas was right. Her equipment checks positioned her to observe every entrance and exit, every potential vantage point, every tactical advantage the facility offered. It was the kind of systematic assessment that special operations personnel conducted when securing a new area of operations. "Could be habit from previous security work," Webb suggested, though his tone indicated he wasn't entirely convinced by his own explanation. "Maybe, but look at her equipment." Sam's maintenance kit appeared standard at first glance: cleaning supplies, basic tools, testing equipment. But Vargas had noticed details that most people missed. Her cleaning solvents were military grade, designed for precision weapons rather than general maintenance. Her tools were high quality, professional instruments that went well beyond what civilian support staff typically carried. Most telling, her testing equipment included diagnostic tools that required specialized training to operate effectively. "That's not hardware store equipment," Vargas pointed out. "Those are precision instruments, the kind of tools someone with advanced technical training would use." Webb examined Sam's kit more closely during her next break, making casual conversation while observing her equipment. The diagnostic multimeter she carried was military spec, designed for testing sophisticated electronic systems. Her cleaning brushes were precision instruments used for maintaining sniper rifles and other specialized weapons. Even her basic tools were professional grade, each selected for specific technical applications. Where does someone learn to use equipment like this? Webb wondered aloud. The answer to that question became clearer during the week's advanced marksmanship training. The SEAL candidates were working on long-range precision shooting, and several were struggling with equipment issues. One of the precision rifles was consistently shooting off target despite multiple attempts to zero the scope. "The scope mount must be loose," Fletcher complained after another missed shot. "This thing is worthless." Lieutenant Commander Cross examined the rifle, checking the obvious points of failure. The scope appeared properly mounted, the rings were tight, and there were no obvious mechanical problems. "Run it through the standard diagnostics," he ordered one of the armory technicians. Sam was conducting routine equipment monitoring nearby, clipboard in hand, when she overheard the technical discussion. For just a moment, her professional mask slipped. She glanced at the problematic rifle, and anyone watching closely would have seen her eyes narrow with the kind of focused assessment that comes from extensive weapons experience. The armory technician spent 20 minutes running diagnostics without identifying the problem. The rifle continued to shoot inconsistently, frustrating everyone involved. Cross was about to declare the weapon unserviceable when Sam approached hesitantly. "Excuse me, sir. I couldn't help but notice the rifle's performance issue." Cross looked at her with barely concealed irritation. This is sophisticated military equipment, not something civilian support staff needs to worry about. "I understand, sir, but I think the problem might be with the barrel harmonics rather than the scope mount." The technical specificity of her diagnosis was startling. Barrel harmonics was an advanced concept that most infantry soldiers never learned, let alone civilian support staff. Cross stared at her for a moment, trying to process how Sam could even know such terminology. "What would you know about barrel harmonics?" he asked, suspicion creeping into his voice. Sam hesitated, clearly realizing she'd revealed more technical knowledge than her cover identity should possess. I read about it in technical manuals. I like to understand the equipment I'm responsible for maintaining." It was a reasonable explanation, but it didn't account for the confident way she'd made the diagnosis or the precise technical language she'd used. Cross was about to dismiss her suggestion when Master Chief Webb intervened. "What makes you think it's a harmonics issue?" Webb asked, genuine curiosity in his voice.
Sam looked uncomfortable with the attention, but answered anyway. "The grouping pattern suggests the barrel is flexing inconsistently under different temperatures and firing rates. The scope is probably fine, but the barrel needs to be checked for stress fractures or mounting irregularities that would affect harmonic vibration." Her explanation was not only technically accurate, but demonstrated a level of understanding that went far beyond casual reading. She was describing advanced marksmanship concepts that most military personnel never encountered unless they specialized in precision shooting. The armory technician followed Sam's suggestion and discovered exactly what she'd predicted: a hairline stress fracture in the barrel that was causing inconsistent harmonic vibrations. The rifle was immediately removed from service for replacement. "How did you know that?" Cross demanded, his suspicion now fully aroused. "Lucky guess," Sam replied, but her voice lacked conviction. She'd made the kind of precise technical diagnosis that required years of hands-on experience with precision weapon systems. Word of the incident spread quickly through the instructor cadre. Within hours, every senior enlisted man and officer at the facility had heard about the civilian support worker who diagnosed a complex weapons malfunction that had stumped their armory technician. "That wasn't luck," Chief Fargus told Webb during their evening debriefing. "That was expertise, professional-level expertise." Webb pulled Sam's personnel file again, studying it with renewed interest. The more he learned about her actual capabilities, the more suspicious her official background became. Government positions could mean anything, but combined with her technical knowledge and tactical awareness, it was starting to paint a picture of someone with a very different background than her current job suggested. "I want to run a deeper background check," Webb decided. "Something doesn't add up here." What he would discover in that background check would challenge everything they thought they knew about Sam Blake. But for now, she continued her careful performance, maintaining the illusion that her technical knowledge was just the result of dedicated study and lucky guessing. The other signs became more obvious once people started looking for them. Sam's physical conditioning was far superior to most civilian workers. Despite her loose-fitting utilities, it was clear she maintained herself in excellent shape. Her reflexes were sharp. She never startled at unexpected sounds, never stumbled or lost her footing, never appeared fatigued despite long hours of physical work. Her situational awareness was perhaps the most telling indicator. Sam always knew what was happening around her, always positioned herself with clear sight lines and multiple exit routes, always seemed to anticipate potential problems before they developed. It was the kind of tactical mindset that took years of training and experience to develop. But the most significant clue came from her interactions with the facility's K-9 units.
The base used military working dogs for various training exercises, and these animals were trained to detect threats and assess human behavior with remarkable accuracy. When the dogs encountered Sam for the first time, their reaction was immediate and unmistakable. Instead of the casual indifference they showed to most civilian personnel, they responded to Sam with the kind of alert respect they typically reserved for experienced military handlers. The dogs recognized something in her bearing, her scent, her energy that marked her as someone with significant military background. The dogs know, Vargas observed as he watched a German shepherd approach Sam with obvious recognition of her authority. Whatever her real background is, those dogs can sense it. The web of evidence was becoming impossible to ignore. Sam Blake possessed technical knowledge that exceeded most military specialists, tactical awareness that suggested extensive operational experience, and the kind of presence that even trained military animals recognized as authentic. But the biggest revelation was yet to come, and it would arrive in a way that would leave no doubt about who Sam Blake really was.
Tuesday morning brought an unexpected crisis to the Naval Special Warfare Training Center that would test everyone's capabilities and reveal truths that had been carefully hidden for months. The advanced combat simulation exercise, designed to challenge the most experienced SEAL candidates, was about to begin when disaster struck in a way that no one had anticipated. The exercise was particularly important because it served as the final evaluation for a group of candidates who had already completed most of their training. Success would move them to the next phase of their SEAL careers. Failure would mean months of additional preparation or, in some cases, removal from the program entirely. The stakes were enormous, and everyone involved understood that careers hung in the balance. Lieutenant Commander Cross had been preparing for this exercise for weeks. The scenario was complex, requiring multiple weapon systems, sophisticated communication equipment, and precision timing. Everything had been checked and double-checked according to standard protocols. The weapons were zeroed, the communication systems tested, and the tactical equipment distributed according to specifications. Sam had conducted her usual morning inspection routine, working through her systematic checklist with the same methodical precision she showed every day. Her equipment monitoring logs showed that all systems were functioning normally, all safety protocols were in place, and the range was ready for the most demanding training exercise of the month. But 15 minutes into the exercise, the carefully orchestrated plan began to fall apart in ways that threatened not just the training objectives, but potentially the safety of everyone involved. The first sign of trouble came from the primary communication system. The encrypted radios that allowed instructors to coordinate the exercise and monitor candidate performance began experiencing systematic failures. What started as occasional static evolved into complete communication blackouts that left different elements of the exercise operating blind. "Comms are down on channels 3 through 7, reported Chief Vargas from the primary observation post. "We're losing coordination with the assault teams." Cross grabbed a backup radio, but it produced only static. The communication failures were spreading through the system faster than anyone could compensate. Within minutes, the exercise had devolved from a controlled training scenario into a potentially dangerous situation where multiple teams were operating without central coordination. But the communication failures were just the beginning. The advanced targeting systems that provided real-time feedback to candidates began malfunctioning next. The laser-based training weapons that allowed for safe but realistic combat simulation started producing erratic readings, making it impossible to assess candidate performance or maintain the exercise's educational value. "Sir, the MIL gear is showing random hits and misses," reported Petty Officer Harrison from the equipment monitoring station. "The candidates are getting false feedback that's completely undermining the training objectives." Cross felt his carefully planned exercise slipping away from him. Without reliable communication and accurate performance monitoring, the exercise became not just useless, but potentially dangerous. SEALs operating without proper coordination and feedback could easily find themselves in situations that exceeded safety parameters. The final blow came when the primary weapons began experiencing mechanical failures. The precision rifles that candidates needed for the long-range elements of the exercise started jamming with suspicious frequency.
Not simple misfires that could be quickly cleared, but complex mechanical failures that rendered the weapons completely inoperable. "This is impossible," Cross muttered, as he examined the third rifle to fail in as many minutes. These weapons were all inspected and tested yesterday. Fletcher, already frustrated by his own performance in the exercise, took the opportunity to voice his suspicions. "Maybe if the equipment maintenance had been done properly, we wouldn't be having these problems," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear, his eyes fixed on Sam as she monitored the situation from her designated position. "The maintenance logs show all equipment was properly serviced," Master Chief Webb interjected. But even he was beginning to wonder if there might be some systemic problem with their equipment protocols. Sam watched the crisis unfold from her monitoring station, her expression carefully neutral, but her mind racing through the technical possibilities. She could see patterns in the failures that the others were missing. The communication breakdowns were following a specific sequence that suggested electronic interference rather than random equipment failure. The targeting system malfunctions were occurring in a pattern that indicated software corruption rather than hardware problems. The weapons failures were showing signs of deliberate sabotage rather than maintenance issues. "Sir, I think there might be a systematic cause for these failures," she said quietly, approaching Cross, despite knowing he would likely dismiss her input. Cross turned to her with barely controlled frustration. "Miss Blake, we don't have time for theories right now. We need solutions." "I understand, sir, but if you look at the pattern of failures, they're not random. Someone may have deliberately compromised the equipment." The suggestion was so unexpected that Cross actually stopped what he was doing. "Are you suggesting sabotage?"
Sam nodded, her voice steady despite the enormity of what she was proposing. The communication failures started with the encrypted channels and worked their way down to basic radio frequencies. That's not how electronic systems normally fail. The targeting systems are showing signs of software corruption that would require deliberate manipulation. And the weapons failures are occurring at precisely the stress points where someone with advanced technical knowledge would expect them to break down. Her analysis was disturbingly accurate and demonstrated a level of technical understanding that went far beyond anything a civilian support worker should possess. Cross found himself actually considering her assessment, even as part of his mind rebelled against taking advice from someone he dismissed as irrelevant. "Even if that's true," Cross said slowly, "how would you know what deliberate sabotage looks like?" It was exactly the wrong question to ask because it forced Sam to either reveal more about her background than her cover identity could support, or to provide an explanation that wouldn't satisfy anyone with real technical knowledge. "I've seen similar patterns in previous positions," she said carefully, but her voice lacked the conviction that had characterized her technical assessment. Chief Vargas had been listening to the conversation, and Sam's analysis aligned perfectly with his own growing suspicions about the pattern of equipment failures. "What would you recommend?" he asked, ignoring Cross's disapproving look. Sam hesitated, clearly aware that any specific recommendations would further compromise her cover identity. But with the exercise collapsing and safety becoming a concern, she made a decision that would change everything. "We need to shut down all electronic systems and conduct a complete security sweep," she said, her voice taking on a tone of authority that hadn't been there before. "Check for electronic surveillance devices, signal jammers, or any equipment that doesn't belong in the facility. Isolate the weapons that haven't failed yet and examine them for signs of tampering. And most importantly, assume that whoever did this has detailed knowledge of our procedures and equipment." The specificity of her recommendations was startling. She wasn't making general suggestions. She was outlining a comprehensive counterintelligence protocol that most military personnel would never have heard of, let alone understood well enough to implement. Cross stared at her, his expression shifting from irritation to suspicion to something approaching alarm. "Ms. Blake, those are very specific recommendations for someone whose job involves maintaining target equipment." Sam realized she had crossed a line she couldn't uncross.
Her analysis and recommendations had revealed a level of expertise that no civilian support worker could possibly possess. The careful facade she'd maintained for 8 months was beginning to crack under the pressure of a crisis that demanded her real skills. "Sir, I just want to help resolve the situation safely," she said, but even she could hear how inadequate that explanation sounded. Master Chief Webb stepped forward, his experienced eye taking in Sam's posture, her confident recommendations, and the unmistakable authority in her voice. "Ma'am, I think it's time we had a conversation about who you really are." The crisis had forced Sam Blake to reveal capabilities that shattered her cover identity, but the real revelation was still to come, and it would arrive in a way that would leave no doubt about her true nature and the skills she'd been hiding.
What happened next would be talked about at the Naval Special Warfare Training Center for years to come. The equipment crisis had evolved into something far more serious than anyone had initially realized, and the solution would require skills that none of the SEALs present possessed. Skills that Sam Blake had been hiding for 8 months. Following Sam's recommendations, Chief Vargas ordered a complete security sweep of the facility. What they discovered sent shockwaves through the entire command structure. Hidden throughout the training area were sophisticated electronic devices designed to interfere with communications and corrupt targeting systems. The weapons failures had been caused by microscopic components that had been deliberately inserted into critical mechanisms timed to fail under stress. "This is professional-level sabotage," Master Chief Webb announced grimly as he examined one of the devices. "Someone with extensive technical knowledge and access to classified equipment specifications did this." But the most disturbing discovery came when they realized the true scope of the threat. The sabotage wasn't just designed to disrupt training, it was preparing for something much more dangerous. Hidden cameras had been documenting SEAL training procedures, tactical formations, and operational protocols. Someone was gathering intelligence on America's most elite warriors. "We need to evacuate the facility immediately," Lieutenant Commander Cross ordered. "This is now a security incident that exceeds our authority to handle." But before the evacuation could begin, the situation escalated in a way no one had anticipated. A figure appeared on the observation tower that overlooked the entire training complex. Someone who clearly didn't belong there and was carrying what appeared to be a high-powered rifle. "Sniper on the tower!" Vargas shouted, his training kicking in as he identified the threat. "All personnel take cover." The SEALs scattered, seeking protection behind equipment and structures. But they quickly realized they were in a tactically disadvantageous position. The observation tower commanded a perfect view of the entire training area, and whoever was up there had positioned themselves to engage multiple targets while remaining protected from return fire. Cross grabbed his radio, trying to coordinate a response, but the communication interference was still affecting their systems. "We need to get our people out of the kill zone," he said. But the shooter's position made any movement extremely dangerous. The sniper fired a warning shot that struck the ground near a group of candidates, demonstrating both excellent marksmanship and clear hostile intent. It was obvious that this wasn't a training accident or misunderstanding. Someone was actively threatening the lives of America's elite warriors. "We need counter-sniper capability," Webb said grimly, "but our precision marksmen are in the armory building. There's no way to get to them without exposing our people to fire." The situation was rapidly becoming desperate. The SEALs were some of the most highly trained warriors in the world, but they were caught in an open area without appropriate weapons or tactical support. The sniper held every advantage: elevation, cover, and the element of surprise. That's when Sam Blake made a decision that would change everything. "Sir," she said quietly to Cross, "I can take the shot." Cross looked at her as if she'd lost her mind. "Ms. Blake, this is not a situation for civilian personnel. You need to get to safety immediately." "Commander, I can take the shot," Sam repeated, her voice carrying an authority that hadn't been there moments before.
The quiet, deferential support worker was gone, replaced with someone who spoke with the confidence of extensive combat experience. You're talking about a 600-meter shot under stress conditions against a trained sniper who's already demonstrated professional-level capabilities. That's not something civilian support staff can handle. "Give me the rifle, Commander," Sam said, her voice steady and certain. "I can make this shot." Master Chief Webb had been studying Sam throughout the crisis, and his instincts were telling him that she was exactly who she claimed to be, someone capable of handling this impossible situation. "Sir," he said to Cross, "I think we should listen to her." The sniper fired again, this time closer to the SEAL's position, making it clear that patience was running out. Cross had seconds to make a decision that could save lives or cost them everything. "Get her a rifle," he ordered. Chief Vargas quickly retrieved one of the few weapons that hadn't been sabotaged, a precision instrument that most marksmen would need significant time to familiarize themselves with. He handed it to Sam, expecting her to need instruction on its operation. Instead, Sam accepted the weapon with the fluid confidence of someone who had handled identical systems thousands of times before. Her inspection of the rifle took less than 10 seconds. A quick check of the action, a glance at the scope settings, a brief assessment of the ammunition. "Range to target," she asked, her voice completely calm despite the life-or-death situation. "Approximately 580 meters," Vargas replied, with variable wind conditions and elevated shooting position. Sam nodded and moved to a firing position with movement so smooth and professional that every SEAL present immediately recognized they were watching an expert at work. Her positioning was textbook perfect, stable, balanced, and optimized for precision shooting under combat conditions.
She settled into her stance, acquired the target through the scope, and began the breathing routine that precedes precision marksmanship. The SEALs watched in stunned silence as the woman they'd dismissed as irrelevant prepared to attempt one of the most difficult shots any of them had ever witnessed. The sniper in the tower fired again, the bullet striking dangerously close to a group of candidates who couldn't retreat any further. Time was running out. Sam's finger found the trigger. Her breathing steadied into the controlled rhythm that allows for surgical precision. Through the scope, she could see her target clearly, a figure in tactical gear who was already lining up another shot at the trapped SEALs. She squeezed the trigger with the kind of controlled precision that comes from years of training and combat experience. The rifle fired, and for a moment that seemed to last forever, everyone watched the bullet's trajectory toward the distant tower. The shot was perfect. 580 meters, variable wind conditions, elevated target, time pressure, and life-or-death consequences, and Sam Blake delivered a round that struck exactly where she intended it to. The sniper in the tower dropped immediately, neutralized by a single shot that demonstrated marksmanship capabilities that would have impressed the most elite military marksman in the world. The silence that followed was deafening. Every person present, from the newest SEAL candidate to the most experienced instructor, was staring at Sam Blake with expressions of complete disbelief. The quiet civilian support worker had just made one of the most impressive combat shots any of them had ever witnessed. Sam engaged the safety, cleared the chamber, and handed the rifle back to Chief Vargas with the same calm professionalism she'd shown throughout the crisis. "Threat neutralized," she said quietly. But her demonstration of impossible marksmanship skills had shattered every assumption the SEALs had made about who she was. The questions that followed would reveal truths that none of them were prepared to hear. The aftermath of Sam's impossible shot created an atmosphere of tension and bewilderment that permeated every corner of the Naval Special Warfare Training Center. Within minutes of neutralizing the sniper threat, the facility was swarming with military police, federal investigators, and intelligence officers who had been summoned to deal with what was now clearly a major security breach. But while the official investigation focused on the sabotage equipment and the identity of the neutralized sniper, the real focus of everyone's attention was the quiet woman who had just demonstrated marksmanship skills that defied explanation. Lieutenant Commander Cross stood in the facility's main briefing room, staring at the after-action report he was supposed to file. How do you officially document that a civilian support worker made a precision combat shot that most elite military snipers would consider extremely difficult? How do you explain that someone whose job involved maintaining target equipment had just saved the lives of multiple SEAL candidates with skills that shouldn't exist outside of the most classified special operations units? "Sir," Chief Vargas said quietly as he entered the briefing room, "we have a problem." Cross looked up from his paperwork with the expression of someone who had reached his limit for problems in a single day. "What now?" "It's about Miss Blake's background. The investigators tried to run a comprehensive security check on her, and they're getting results that don't make sense." Vargas placed a folder on the table that was thinner than it should have been for someone who had supposedly worked in various government positions for years. Her employment history is unusual. References to positions that don't appear in official records, clearances that are listed as classification pending, and background information that seems to have been systematically sanitized. Cross examined the file, his frown deepening with each page. "This reads like someone's real history has been intentionally obscured. Or like someone whose real history is so classified that it can't appear in standard personnel files," Vargas suggested. Meanwhile, in another part of the facility, Master Chief Webb was conducting his own investigation. His years of experience in special operations had taught him to recognize patterns that others missed, and everything about Sam Blake's behavior suggested someone with extensive military background trying to blend into a civilian role. "I've been thinking about that shot," Webb told Dr. Rachel Quinn, the Navy psychologist who had been called in to assess the psychological impact of the day's events. 580 meters, elevated target, variable wind conditions, time pressure, and she made it look routine. Dr. Quinn had been studying Sam's personnel file as well, looking for psychological indicators that might explain her remarkable performance under pressure. Her stress response during the crisis was fascinating. Most civilians would show significant physiological signs of panic in that situation. Sam showed the kind of controlled stress response that indicates extensive training in high-pressure environments. "Training like what?" Webb asked. "Training like special operations personnel receive when they're prepared for combat situations. Her heart rate, breathing pattern, and decision-making process all suggested someone who had been in similar situations before." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Captain David Nash, a senior officer who had driven from SEAL Team 8's headquarters as soon as he heard about the incident. Nash's presence added another layer of complexity to the investigation because SEAL Team 8 had no official connection to the training facility. "I need to speak with Samantha Blake," Nash announced, without preamble. His tone carried the kind of urgency that suggested this wasn't a routine inquiry. "Sir, may I ask why SEAL Team 8 has interest in our civilian support staff?" Cross asked carefully. Nash's answer was carefully measured. "Let's just say that someone matching Ms. Blake's description and capabilities has been of interest to our unit for some time." The implications of that statement were staggering. If SEAL Team 8 had been tracking someone matching Sam's description, it suggested that her presence at the training facility wasn't coincidental at all. It suggested that she was there for reasons that had nothing to do with equipment maintenance and target setup. While the officers were trying to piece together Sam's background, the SEAL candidates were dealing with their own psychological shock. Seaman recruit Fletcher, who had spent months mocking and dismissing Sam, was particularly shaken by what he'd witnessed. "How is that possible?" he kept asking his teammates. "How does someone who maintains equipment make a shot like that?"
Petty Officer Harrison, who had always been more observant than Fletcher, was starting to remember details that now took on new significance. "Think about it," he said. "Have you ever seen her startled by gunfire? Have you ever seen her make a mistake with equipment? Have you ever seen her in a situation where she didn't know exactly what to do?" The questions forced Fletcher to confront the uncomfortable reality that he had been completely wrong about Sam. Every interaction they had, every dismissive comment he had made, every cruel joke at her expense, all of it had been directed at someone whose true capabilities far exceeded his own. But why would someone like that work as range support? Fletcher asked, struggling to reconcile what he'd seen with what he had believed. "Maybe," Harrison suggested quietly, "she wasn't really working as range support at all."
The investigation took on new urgency when the identity of the neutralized sniper was finally established. The man Sam had shot was identified as Marcus Reed, a former military contractor who had been selling classified information to foreign governments for several years. His presence at the training facility, combined with the sophisticated sabotage equipment, suggested a coordinated intelligence operation targeting SEAL training procedures. This wasn't random, the lead federal investigator told the assembled command staff. Someone was conducting systematic intelligence gathering on our most elite military units. The sabotage was designed to create chaos while documenting our response procedures and tactical capabilities. Captain Nash listened to the briefing with growing certainty that his suspicions about Sam Blake were correct. "Has anyone considered," he asked carefully, "that the intelligence operation might have been detected and countered by someone who was specifically positioned to do so?" The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Everyone in the room understood the implication that Sam Blake's presence at the facility might not have been coincidental at all, but part of a counterintelligence operation that had been running parallel to Reed's espionage activities. "Sir," Cross said slowly, "are you suggesting that Miss Blake is some kind of undercover operative?" Nash's answer was diplomatically vague, but unmistakably confirmatory. "I'm suggesting that someone with her demonstrated capabilities doesn't end up in a civilian support role by accident." As the day wore on, more pieces of the puzzle began falling into place. Sam's systematic observation of facility procedures, her technical expertise with classified equipment, her perfect positioning to detect the sabotage operation, and finally, her ability to neutralize the threat with skills that exceeded most military professionals, all of it pointed to someone who had been conducting her own mission while maintaining a perfect cover identity. But the most disturbing question remained unanswered. If Sam Blake was really an undercover operative, why had no one in the official command structure known about her mission? And what did her presence mean for the security and integrity of the Naval Special Warfare Training Center? The answers to those questions would challenge everything the SEALs thought they knew about their facility, their security, and the quiet women who had been watching them for 8 months while they completely failed to notice who she really was.
The confrontation that would finally reveal the truth about Sam Blake came at 1800 hours in the facility's secure conference room. Present were Lieutenant Commander Cross, Master Chief Webb, Chief Vargas, Captain Nash from SEAL Team 8, Dr. Quinn, and 2 federal investigators whose credentials suggested they operated at classification levels that most military personnel never encountered. Sam entered the room with the same measured pace she'd maintained throughout her 8 months at the facility, but her demeanor had shifted subtly. The deferential civilian support worker was gone, replaced by someone who carried herself with unmistakable professional confidence. She took a seat at the conference table and waited calmly for the questions that everyone knew were coming. Lieutenant Commander Cross began the session, his voice carrying a mixture of respect and barely controlled frustration. "Ms. Blake, I think it's time we had an honest conversation about who you really are and what you've been doing at this facility." Sam's response was measured and careful. I'm Samantha Blake, civilian support staff, assigned to range maintenance and equipment monitoring duties. Cut the bullshit, Cross said bluntly. Civilian support staff don't make 580-meter precision shots under combat conditions. They don't diagnose sophisticated sabotage operations, and they don't handle weapons like they've been using them professionally for years. For the first time since anyone had known her, Sam allowed a slight smile to cross her face. You're right, Commander. They don't. Captain Nash leaned forward, his expression intense. Sam, I've been tracking someone matching your description and capabilities for the better part of a year. Someone who's been conducting unauthorized intelligence operations at military facilities across 3 different states. Sam met Nash's gaze steadily. And what did your tracking tell you, Captain? It told me that whoever you are, you're not working alone, you're not operating without official sanction, and you're very, very good at what you do. Master Chief Webb had been studying Sam throughout the exchange, and his experienced eye was picking up details that confirmed his growing suspicions. Your posture's different. Your voice is different. Even the way you're sitting is different. You're not playing a role anymore. That's correct, Master Chief, Sam acknowledged. The role is no longer necessary. Dr. Quinn consulted her notes, her psychological training helping her read the subtle changes in Sam's behavior. You're exhibiting classic signs of operational stress relief. Someone who's been maintaining a cover identity for an extended period of time and is finally able to drop the facade. One of the federal investigators, a stern woman in her 50s who had introduced herself only as Agent Morrison, placed a thick folder on the table. We've been trying to verify your background, Ms. Blake, and what we've found is interesting. References to positions that don't exist in official records, security clearances that are classified above our access level, and employment history that's been systematically sanitized. Sam glanced at the folder, but didn't seem surprised by its contents. What did you expect to find? We expected to find evidence that you're conducting an unauthorized intelligence operation, Agent Morrison replied. What we found instead suggests that your operation is very much authorized but at classification levels that most of us don't have access to. The room fell silent as the implications of that statement sank in. If Sam's operation was officially sanctioned at classification levels above federal investigators, it meant she was working for agencies that operated in the deepest shadows of national security. Lieutenant Commander Cross felt a chill as he realized what they were dealing with. You're not just former military, are you? You're current military, special operations. Sam was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing how much she could reveal without compromising operational security. I can't discuss the specifics of my current assignment, but I can tell you that the threat you encountered today was part of a much larger intelligence operation that's been targeting special operations training facilities across the country. Captain Nash nodded grimly. We suspected as much. The equipment sabotage, the intelligence gathering, the systematic documentation of SEAL training procedures, it's too sophisticated for a lone actor. Marcus Reed, the sniper I neutralized, was part of a network that's been selling classified special operations intelligence to foreign governments for over 2 years. My mission was to identify the full extent of their penetration and neutralize the threat to operational security. Chief Vargas leaned back in his chair, pieces of the puzzle finally clicking into place. That's why you've been conducting such systematic observations. You weren't just maintaining equipment, you were conducting a security assessment. Every day for 8 months, documenting procedures, identifying potential vulnerabilities, tracking personnel with access to classified information, and waiting for the intelligence network to reveal itself. Master Chief Webb had been studying Sam throughout the exchange, and his experienced eye was picking up details that confirmed his growing suspicions. Your posture's different. Your voice is different. Even the way you're sitting is different. You're not playing a role anymore. That's correct, Master Chief, Sam acknowledged. The role is no longer necessary. Dr. Quinn consulted her notes, her psychological training helping her read the subtle changes in Sam's behavior. You're exhibiting classic signs of operational stress relief. Someone who's been maintaining a cover identity for an extended period of time and is finally able to drop the facade. The stress of maintaining that kind of cover for 8 months must have been enormous, allowing yourself to be dismissed, mocked, and treated as irrelevant while conducting a critical national security mission.
Sam's expression hardened slightly. The mockery was challenging.
especially from personnel whose lives I was working to protect. But maintaining cover was more important than personal comfort. Seaman recruit Fletcher, who had been called to the meeting as a representative of the SEAL candidates, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The weight of his months of cruel treatment towards someone who had been risking her life to protect him was becoming unbearable. "Ma'am," Fletcher said quietly, "I owe you an apology. We all do. The way we treated you was inexcusable." Sam looked at Fletcher with an expression that was professional but not unkind. "You treated me exactly as my cover identity was designed to be treated," Seaman recruit. "No apology is necessary." Agent Morrison cleared her throat, bringing the focus back to operational matters. "Miss Blake, can you tell us how extensive this intelligence network is? Are there other facilities at risk?" The network Reed was part of has been successfully dismantled. Today's operation was designed to trigger their final intelligence gathering attempt, which would allow us to identify all remaining assets and eliminate the threat completely. Lieutenant Commander Cross felt a mixture of admiration and unease. "So, everything that happened today, the equipment failures, the crisis, even Reed's appearance, was orchestrated?" "The sabotage was real, and the threat to your personnel was genuine," Sam clarified. "But yes, the timing was managed to create the circumstances that would force the network to reveal itself completely." Captain Nash studied Sam with the kind of professional respect that one elite operator shows another. "What's your actual background? SEAL team, Delta, something even more classified?" Sam's answer was carefully measured. "I can tell you that my call sign was Shadow. I served with SEAL Team 8 for 7 years, and my specialties included counterintelligence and precision marksmanship. Beyond that, the specifics of my service record remain classified." The revelation sent shockwaves through the room. Sam Blake wasn't just former military. She was former SEAL, one of the most elite warriors the Navy had ever produced, who had spent 8 months allowing herself to be treated as irrelevant while conducting one of the most sophisticated counterintelligence operations any of them had ever encountered. But even with her partial revelation, questions remained. What was her current assignment? Who did she really work for? And most importantly, what happened next for the woman who had successfully completed a mission that none of them knew existed? The full scope of Samantha Blake's true identity and mission would emerge over the following hours as classification levels were adjusted and operational security protocols allowed for a more complete briefing. What the assembled personnel learned would fundamentally change their understanding not just of Sam, but of the threats facing America's most elite military units. Agent Morrison began the expanded briefing by establishing the security parameters that would govern their discussion. What you're about to hear is classified at levels that require additional clearances. Everyone in this room has been temporarily upgraded to allow for full disclosure, but this information does not leave this facility. She opened a new folder, this one significantly thicker than the sanitized personnel file they'd seen earlier. Samantha Blake. Real name, Samantha Elizabeth Blake, Lieutenant Commander, United States Navy, currently assigned to the Defense Intelligence Agency's Special Activities Division. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Sam wasn't just former SEAL. She was a current naval officer working for one of the most secretive intelligence agencies in the government. Her assignment to the training facility hadn't been coincidental or unauthorized. It had been a carefully planned operation at the highest levels of national security. Lieutenant Commander Blake, Agent Morrison continued, using Sam's actual rank for the first time, has been conducting Operation Silent Shield, a counterintelligence mission designed to identify and neutralize foreign intelligence networks that had been systematically compromising special operations training programs. Captain Nash leaned forward, his expression grim. "How long has this been going on?" Sam answered this time, her voice carrying the authority of her actual rank and position. "We identified the first signs of intelligence compromise approximately 18 months ago. Classified training procedures,
tactical formations, and operational protocols were appearing in foreign intelligence reports with suspicious accuracy. She stood and moved to the briefing board, her movements now displaying the confident bearing of a senior military officer rather than the careful steps of civilian support staff. The intelligence was too specific and too current to be coming from general surveillance. Someone with direct access to special operations training was selling information to hostile governments. Master Chief Webb studied the timeline Sam was presenting. 18 months? That's when we started seeing increased foreign interest in our training schedules and facility layouts. Exactly, Sam confirmed. The intelligence network was sophisticated, with multiple assets positioned at different facilities. They weren't just gathering information randomly, they were conducting systematic intelligence collection designed to compromise the effectiveness of American special operations. Lieutenant Commander Cross felt a chill as he realized the scope of what they'd been dealing with. How many facilities were compromised? 7 installations across 4 states, special operations training centers, advanced weapons testing facilities, and tactical development programs. The network had access to information that could have compromised ongoing operations and endangered American lives worldwide. Dr. Quinn consulted her psychological assessment files. The stress of maintaining deep cover for 8 months while conducting this level of investigation must have been extraordinary. The psychological discipline required to allow yourself to be consistently dismissed and undermined while protecting the very people who are treating you poorly. Sam's expression softened slightly. The personal challenges were secondary to the mission requirements. American Special Operations personnel were at risk because of intelligence leaks. That took priority over any personal discomfort. Chief Vargas was studying the operational timeline with professional interest. The systematic way you conducted your surveillance makes more sense now. You weren't just observing our procedures, you were documenting every aspect of facility security and personnel access. Every person with access to classified information became a potential subject of investigation, Sam confirmed. I had to understand not just what information was being compromised, but how it was being accessed and transmitted. Seaman Recruit Fletcher raised his hand hesitantly, still processing the magnitude of how wrong his assumptions had been. Ma'am, did you suspect specific individuals from the beginning? Sam's answer was carefully measured. The investigation was conducted without preconceptions about personnel loyalty. Everyone with appropriate access was evaluated based on behavior patterns, financial indicators, and communication activities. Agent Morrison pulled out another set of documents. The network Lieutenant Commander Blake uncovered was more extensive than we initially realized. Marcus Reed, the operative she neutralized yesterday, was just one node in a system that included contractors, former military personnel, and even some current service members who were providing information for financial gain. The revelation that current military personnel were involved in the intelligence sales sent shockwaves through the room. The idea that American service members would betray their oath and endanger their colleagues for money was almost incomprehensible to the dedicated professionals present. How was the information being transmitted? Master Chief Webb asked.
Sam moved to a display screen and began outlining the sophisticated communication network the investigation had uncovered. The network used encrypted communications, dead drops, and apparently routine contractor activities to move classified information. They were particularly clever in using the chaos of training exercises to mask intelligence-gathering activities. Captain Nash studied the network diagram with growing alarm. This level of sophistication suggests state-level support. Who was buying the information? Multiple hostile governments, Agent Morrison replied. The network was selling to anyone willing to pay premium prices for American special operations intelligence. China, Russia, Iran, and several non-state actors with terrorist connections. The scope of the betrayal was staggering. American military secrets had been sold to virtually every major adversary, potentially compromising operations worldwide and endangering the lives of special operations personnel in active theaters. The sabotage equipment we discovered yesterday was designed to create documentation opportunities, Sam explained. By forcing emergency responses and tactical reactions, they could observe and record how American Special Operations personnel handle crisis situations. Dr. Quinn was taking notes on the psychological aspects of the operation. The level of compartmentalization required to maintain your cover while conducting this investigation is remarkable. You essentially had to become two different people simultaneously. That's standard procedure for deep cover operations, Sam replied. But you're right that the psychological demands were significant. 8 months of allowing people to underestimate and dismiss you while knowing that their lives depended on your mission's success required constant discipline. Lieutenant Commander Cross was reviewing the timeline of events, trying to understand how he had missed the signs of such a sophisticated operation occurring under his command. The equipment crisis yesterday, was that entirely orchestrated? The sabotage was real and dangerous, Sam clarified, but the timing was managed to create circumstances that would force the network to reveal their full capabilities and complete their intelligence gathering in a single operation that we could monitor and document. Agent Morrison nodded. It was a controlled burn. We allowed them to think they were succeeding while actually documenting their entire network and gathering evidence for prosecution. The brilliance of the operation was becoming clear. Rather than simply arresting known operatives and leaving the network intact, the investigation had allowed the intelligence operation to continue under careful observation until every asset could be identified and neutralized simultaneously. "What's the current status of the network?" Captain Nash asked. "As of 0600 this morning, all identified assets have been arrested by federal authorities. The network has been completely dismantled, the intelligence flow has been stopped, and the classified information they obtained is being assessed for damage control." Master Chief Webb looked at Sam with new respect and understanding. "You saved lives. Not just the people here yesterday, but special operations personnel worldwide who would have been endangered by compromised intelligence." Sam's response was characteristically modest, but carried the weight of absolute conviction. That's what we swore an oath to do: protect and defend. Sometimes that means taking a bullet in combat. Sometimes it means spending 8 months being treated like you don't matter while you gather evidence to protect your fellow warriors. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the full magnitude of what Sam Blake had accomplished. She had conducted one of the most sophisticated counterintelligence operations in recent military history, neutralized a network that threatened American lives worldwide, and done it all while maintaining perfect operational security in one of the most challenging psychological environments imaginable. But questions remained about what came next, both for Sam and for the facility that had unknowingly hosted one of the most important intelligence operations of the decade.
The deeper implications of Operation Silent Shield extended far beyond the Naval Special Warfare Training Center, and what emerged in the following briefing sessions would reshape how the military approached operational security and personnel screening. Lieutenant Commander Blake's mission had uncovered vulnerabilities in America's most elite military programs that could have had catastrophic consequences if left unaddressed. Agent Morrison began the extended briefing by outlining the broader context that had necessitated Sam's mission. The intelligence compromise we discovered wasn't limited to training procedures and tactical formations. The network was also gathering information about active deployments, operational timelines, and personnel assignments that could have endangered ongoing missions worldwide. She displayed a world map marked with locations where compromised intelligence had been detected. Red markers indicated special operations bases, training facilities, and deployment areas where leaked information had appeared in foreign intelligence reports. The scope was staggering. Nearly every major special operations command had been affected in some way. Lieutenant Commander Blake's investigation at this facility was part of a coordinated effort involving multiple agencies and operational commands. Similar operations were conducted at 6 other installations, but this facility presented unique challenges due to the sophistication of the intelligence network operating here. Sam stood to address the group, her bearing now fully reflecting her actual rank and authority. The network at this facility was the most advanced we encountered. They had established multiple intelligence collection methods, including electronic surveillance, human intelligence assets, and even manipulation of training exercises to create documentation opportunities. Captain Nash studied the briefing materials with growing alarm. "You're saying they were actively manipulating our training to gather intelligence?" Equipment failures that seemed random were often deliberately triggered to observe emergency response procedures, Sam confirmed. Communication interruptions that appeared to be routine technical problems were actually designed to force the use of backup systems and alternative protocols that the network wanted to document. Master Chief Webb felt a chill as he realized how thoroughly their facility had been penetrated. How long had this been going on before you arrived? Based on our analysis, the network had been operating here for approximately 14 months before I was assigned to the facility. They had extensive documentation of training procedures, tactical formations, equipment specifications, and personnel capabilities. The revelation that their facility had been under systematic surveillance for over 2 years was deeply disturbing. Every training exercise, every equipment test, every tactical innovation had potentially been observed and documented by hostile intelligence services. Lieutenant Commander Cross was reviewing the timeline of suspicious incidents that now took on new meaning. Equipment failures, communication problems, training delays. We attributed all of that to normal operational challenges. That was exactly what the network was counting on. By creating problems that appeared routine, they could gather intelligence without triggering security concerns. Dr. Quinn was studying the psychological profiles of the network operatives. The level of patience and planning required for this operation is remarkable. They were thinking in terms of years rather than months. State-sponsored intelligence operations typically operate on extended timelines. They're willing to invest years in developing access and gathering information because the intelligence value of special operations capabilities is so high. Chief Vargas raised a critical question that had been troubling him. If the network was so sophisticated, how were you able to identify and track them without being detected yourself? Sam's answer revealed the exceptional complexity of her cover operation. I had to become genuinely invisible to their surveillance while conducting my own investigation. That meant not just maintaining my cover identity with facility personnel, but also avoiding detection by professional intelligence operatives who were specifically looking for counterintelligence activity. The technical challenges of conducting surveillance while under surveillance required skills that went far beyond normal military training. Sam had been conducting a chess match against professional spies for 8 months, anticipating their moves while concealing her own activities. The network suspected that facility security might be investigating them. They were specifically watching for signs of counterintelligence activity, which made Lieutenant Commander Blake's cover identity even more critical. Seaman Recruit Fletcher was still processing the magnitude of what he'd witnessed. "Ma'am, when you made that shot yesterday, you knew exactly who you were targeting and why?" Marcus Reed was the network's primary technical specialist. His presence at the facility represented the culmination of their intelligence gathering operation. He was there to conduct final documentation of emergency response procedures before the network moved to extract all their assets. The precision of Sam's shot took on new meaning with this context. She hadn't just eliminated a sniper threatening SEAL candidates, she had eliminated a key operative whose escape would have compromised the entire counterintelligence operation.
Master Chief Webb was studying the operational timeline with professional admiration. You allowed them to think they were succeeding right up until the moment you took them down. The network had to believe they had accomplished their mission, Sam explained. If we had moved against them too early, other assets would have gone to ground, and we would never have identified the complete network structure. Agent Morrison displayed intelligence assessments showing the global impact of the network's activities. The information they gathered was being used to target American Special Operations personnel in active theaters. We have evidence that compromised training procedures led to increased casualty rates in several operational areas. The human cost of the intelligence leaks was sobering. American warriors had died because their tactical procedures had been sold to their enemies. The network's activities weren't just abstract intelligence gathering, they were directly contributing to American casualties in combat zones worldwide. How many lives were saved by shutting down this network? Dr. Quinn asked. Conservative estimates suggest that hundreds of special operations personnel worldwide were at increased risk due to compromised intelligence, Agent Morrison replied. Lieutenant Commander Blake's mission directly contributed to protecting those lives. Captain Nash was reviewing the broader implications for special operations security. This changes how we have to think about operational security. If networks this sophisticated can operate undetected for years, we need fundamental changes to our security protocols. Sam nodded agreement. That's one of the secondary objectives of Operation Silent Shield. The intelligence we gathered about network operations will be used to develop new security procedures that are resistant to this type of penetration. The mission had succeeded not just in dismantling the current threat, but in providing the information necessary to prevent similar operations in the future. Sam's 8 months of careful observation had produced a comprehensive understanding of how hostile intelligence services targeted American special operations. "What's the current threat assessment?" Lieutenant Commander Cross asked. "The immediate network has been neutralized," Agent Morrison replied. "But we're treating this as an ongoing challenge. Other networks are certainly operating, and they'll adapt their methods based on what they learn about how this one was discovered." Sam's mission represented just one battle in a larger intelligence war that would continue indefinitely. The techniques and procedures developed during Operation Silent Shield would become part of an evolving defense against increasingly sophisticated threats to American military capabilities. But for the personnel at the Naval Special Warfare Training Center, the immediate question was how their facility would change now that the hidden threat had been eliminated and their quiet support worker had been revealed as one of America's most elite intelligence operatives. The wheels of military justice moved swiftly once the full scope of the intelligence network was revealed. Within 72 hours of Operation Silent Shield's conclusion, coordinated arrests were taking place across 4 states as federal agents rounded up the remaining members of the spy ring that had threatened American special operations for nearly 2 years. The primary prosecution would be handled by military tribunals, given that several of the network members were current or former military personnel whose betrayal fell under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Agent Morrison briefed the facility's leadership on the legal proceedings that would follow, emphasizing the critical importance of Lieutenant Commander Blake's carefully documented evidence. Every piece of intelligence Lieutenant Commander Blake gathered over the past 8 months will be used in the prosecution, Morrison explained to the assembled command staff. Her meticulous documentation of communication patterns, financial transactions, and operational procedures has provided prosecutors with an airtight case against the network. The legal ramifications extended beyond simple espionage charges. The network members would face accusations of treason, conspiracy to commit acts harmful to national security, and, in several cases, accessory to murder charges related to American casualties that resulted from compromised intelligence. Master Chief Webb reviewed the prosecution summaries with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Some of these people served honorably for years before they decided money was more important than their oath. Sam, now operating under her actual rank and authority, had spent the past 2 days providing detailed testimony to military prosecutors. The precision of her evidence gathering would make the difference between successful prosecutions and cases that might be dismissed on technicalities. The network's financial records show payments totaling over $3.2 million over 18 months. Individual payments ranged from $50,000 for basic training procedures to $400,000 for detailed operational intelligence about active deployments. The monetary scope of the betrayal was staggering, but more disturbing was the systematic nature of the intelligence sales.
The network hadn't been selling information opportunistically. They had been fulfilling specific intelligence requirements provided by foreign governments. They were essentially running a classified information marketplace, Agent Morrison added. Foreign intelligence services would submit requests for specific types of information, and the network would actively work to acquire and deliver exactly what was requested. Captain Nash studied the evidence files with professional disgust. They were treating American military secrets like commodities in a marketplace. The lives of our people meant nothing to them beyond their commercial value. The prosecution of Marcus Reed, the operative Sam had neutralized during the crisis, presented unique challenges, since his death meant he couldn't testify about the network's operations. However, the intelligence gathered from his equipment and communications provided crucial evidence about the network's international connections. Reed's communication logs showed direct contact with intelligence services from 6 different countries. He wasn't just selling to the highest bidder, he was coordinating simultaneous sales to multiple hostile governments. The international implications required coordination between military prosecutors and federal agencies responsible for counterintelligence. The network's activities had potentially compromised ongoing operations in multiple theaters, requiring damage assessments that would take months to complete. Lieutenant Commander Cross was reviewing the impact assessments for his own facility. How much of our classified information was compromised? Essentially, everything, Sam replied honestly. Training procedures, tactical formations, equipment specifications, personnel capabilities, facility layouts, and security protocols. The network had systematic access to virtually every aspect of your operations. The comprehensive nature of the intelligence compromise meant that the Naval Special Warfare Training Center would need to implement entirely new security protocols, update all classified procedures, and essentially rebuild their operational security from the ground up. But the most significant impact was on the personnel who had unknowingly been under surveillance for over 2 years. Every SEAL candidate, every instructor, every support worker had been observed, documented, and analyzed by hostile intelligence services without their knowledge. Dr. Quinn had been conducting psychological assessments of facility personnel to help them process the violation of their security and privacy. Seaman Recruit Fletcher was among those struggling with the implications. "Ma'am," he asked Sam during one of the debrief sessions, "do foreign governments have files on all of us individually?" Sam's answer was direct but compassionate. The network gathered individual performance assessments, capability evaluations, and behavioral profiles on most facility personnel. That information has been provided to foreign intelligence services, and we have to assume they will retain it indefinitely. The personal impact extended beyond just professional concerns. Many of the personnel had families whose security was now potentially compromised because of their association with special operations training.
"We are implementing new security protocols for all personnel and their families," Agent Morrison announced. "Enhanced monitoring, updated communication security, and modified personal security procedures for anyone who was documented by the network." The facility's response to the security breach was comprehensive and immediate. New screening procedures for all personnel, enhanced background investigations, continuous monitoring of communication systems, and regular counterintelligence assessments became standard operating procedures. Master Chief Webb was appointed to lead the facility's new Security Oversight Committee, charged with implementing the lessons learned from Operation Silent Shield. "We're never going to let something like this happen again," he announced during the first committee meeting. "The price of our operational security is constant vigilance." But perhaps the most important aspect of the response was acknowledging Lieutenant Commander Blake's extraordinary service and sacrifice. For 8 months, she had endured dismissal, mockery, and systematic underestimation while conducting one of the most important counterintelligence operations in recent military history. The President of the United States has authorized several classified commendations for Lieutenant Commander Blake's service, Agent Morrison announced, during a closed ceremony attended only by personnel with appropriate clearances. While the specific nature of her awards cannot be made public, I can tell you that her service has been recognized at the highest levels of government. Sam accepted the recognition with characteristic humility. "I was privileged to serve alongside some of America's finest warriors, even if they didn't know who I was at the time. The mission's success belongs to everyone who contributed to maintaining our operational security." The ceremony concluded with Sam being officially reassigned to her next mission, the details of which would remain classified. But her 8 months at the Naval Special Warfare Training Center had produced changes that would protect American Special Operations personnel for years to come. Chief Vargas summed up the feelings of everyone who had worked with Sam during her time at the facility. "She saved lives we'll never know about, prevented casualties we'll never see, and protected operations we'll never hear about. That's what real heroes do. They succeed in missions so classified that their success can never be publicly acknowledged." Justice had been served, the network had been dismantled, and American Special Operations were more secure because of Lieutenant Commander Samantha Blake's extraordinary service. But her story was far from over. It was simply moving into shadows even deeper than the ones she'd operated in for the past 8 months. 3 weeks after the conclusion of Operation Silent Shield, the Naval Special Warfare Training Center had undergone a transformation that went far beyond new security protocols and updated procedures. The revelation of Lieutenant Commander Blake's true identity and mission had fundamentally changed how everyone at the facility understood their work, their responsibilities, and the threats they faced. The morning briefing room that had once hosted routine training discussions now served as the headquarters for the most comprehensive security overhaul in the facility's history. Master Chief Webb, now serving as the Director of Operational Security, addressed a gathering of senior personnel who were implementing the lessons learned from Sam's investigation. "The intelligence network we discovered represents a new category of threat," Webb began, his voice carrying the weight of hard-earned experience. "Traditional security measures were completely inadequate against the level of sophistication we encountered. We're not just updating our procedures, we're completely reimagining how we protect our most sensitive operations." The changes were visible throughout the facility. New screening procedures for all personnel, enhanced background investigations that looked beyond traditional indicators, continuous electronic monitoring of communication systems, and regular counterintelligence assessments had become standard operating procedures. But the most significant change was psychological. The knowledge that they had been under systematic surveillance for over 2 years had profoundly impacted every person who worked at the facility. The casual assumption that their training environment was secure had been shattered, replaced by a much more realistic understanding of the threats they faced. Lieutenant Commander Cross was overseeing the implementation of new training protocols that incorporated counterintelligence awareness into every aspect of SEAL preparation. "We're teaching our candidates to think like intelligence targets from day one," he explained to visiting officials from other special operations commands. "They need to understand that their enemies will study them as intensely as they study their enemies." The facility had become a model for other installations across the military. Delegations from special operations commands worldwide were visiting to learn about the security measures developed in response to the intelligence penetration. The procedures and protocols pioneered at the Naval Special Warfare Training Center were being adapted and implemented at military facilities around the globe. Dr. Quinn had expanded her role to include ongoing psychological support for personnel dealing with the knowledge that their professional and personal information had been compromised. Quote, "The violation of trust and security that these personnel experienced requires ongoing attention," end quote, she reported during a medical staff meeting. "Many are struggling with the knowledge that hostile governments have detailed files on their capabilities and vulnerabilities." Seaman Recruit Fletcher had become an unofficial spokesperson for the junior personnel affected by the revelation. His experience of having unknowingly mocked and dismissed someone who was risking her life to protect him had become a powerful teaching tool about assumptions and respect. Quote, "You never really know who someone is or what they're capable of," Fletcher told a group of new arrivals during orientation. "The person you are dismissing as irrelevant might be the person whose mission is keeping you alive," end quote.
His transformation from arrogant bully to thoughtful leader exemplified the broader changes occurring throughout the facility. The revelation of Sam's true identity had forced everyone to confront their assumptions about worth, capability, and the importance of treating all personnel with professional respect. Chief Vargas had been promoted to oversee the facility's new Intelligence Threat Assessment Division, charged with continuously monitoring for signs of hostile intelligence activity. Quote, Lieutenant Commander Blake taught us that the most dangerous threats are often the ones we can't see, end quote. He explained to his new team, our job is to develop the capability to see them before they can compromise our operations, end quote. The technical innovations developed during Sam's investigation had been codified into new counterintelligence procedures that were being distributed throughout the special operations community. Her methods for detecting electronic surveillance, identifying suspicious behavioral patterns, and conducting covert investigations had become standard training for security personnel. But perhaps the most important legacy of Operation Silent Shield was the renewed emphasis on the values that Sam had embodied during her 8 months at the facility. Her patience, professionalism, and dedication to mission accomplishment despite personal hardship had become a model for how military personnel should conduct themselves in challenging circumstances. Captain Nash, now serving as a liaison between SEAL Team 8 and the facility's new security apparatus, often spoke about the lessons learned from Sam's example. Quote, she showed us what it means to put mission before personal comfort, duty before recognition, and service before self-interest. Those aren't just words in a manual. They're principles that can save lives when lived authentically, end quote. The facility's new memorial wall included a classified plaque recognizing the contribution of personnel whose service couldn't be publicly acknowledged. While Sam's name couldn't appear on the wall due to operational security requirements, everyone who worked at the facility knew that the memorial honored her sacrifice and the sacrifices of others like her who served in the shadows.
The training programs had been fundamentally restructured to incorporate the intelligence gathered during Sam's investigation. SEAL candidates now learned not just how to conduct operations, but how to protect themselves from intelligence gathering by sophisticated adversaries. The curriculum included modules on recognizing surveillance, protecting communications, and maintaining operational security in environments where hostile intelligence services might be operating. We're training warriors for a different kind of battlefield, Master Chief Webb explained to a congressional oversight committee. The enemy isn't just the person shooting at you. It's the person sitting next to you in the mess hall who might be documenting your capabilities for sale to hostile governments. The physical security of the facility had been completely overhauled. New electronic countermeasures, enhanced communication security, and sophisticated detection systems made it virtually impossible for the kind of intelligence operation Sam had uncovered to operate undetected in the future. But technology was only part of the solution. The human element remained the most critical component of the facility's new security posture. Personnel at every level had been trained to recognize signs of suspicious activity, report security concerns, and maintain the kind of vigilance that would prevent future intelligence penetrations. Security isn't just the responsibility of security personnel, Lieutenant Commander Cross announced during a facility-wide briefing. Every person who works here is part of our defense against intelligence threats. The price of our operational security is constant vigilance from every member of our team. The transformation of the Naval Special Warfare Training Center represented more than just improved security procedures. It represented a fundamental evolution in how America's most elite military units understood and responded to modern threats. The lessons learned from Lieutenant Commander Blake's mission would protect special operations personnel for generations to come. But for those who had worked alongside Sam during her 8 months as range support, the most important lesson was simpler and more personal. Never underestimate the quiet professional who dedicates their life to protecting others, even when that protection requires remaining invisible and unrecognized.
6 months after Lieutenant Commander Samantha Blake disappeared back into the classified shadows from which she had emerged, the impact of her service continued to ripple through the military and intelligence communities in ways that would never be fully documented or publicly acknowledged. Her 8-month mission at the Naval Special Warfare Training Center had become a case study in operational excellence that was being used to train the next generation of intelligence operatives. The annual Advanced Counterintelligence Symposium, held at a classified location and attended by personnel from across the intelligence community, featured an extensive analysis of Operation Silent Shield. While Sam's name was never mentioned in the official presentations, everyone in attendance understood that they were studying the work of one of the most effective deep cover operatives in recent history. The subject demonstrated perfect operational discipline over an extended period while maintaining a cover identity that required extraordinary psychological resilience, the lead presenter explained to an audience of intelligence professionals. The ability to endure systematic dismissal and mockery while conducting critical national security work represents the highest level of professional dedication. Master Chief Webb, now recognized as one of the military's leading experts on counterintelligence security, often spoke at military academies and staff colleges about the lessons learned from Sam's operation. While he couldn't discuss the specifics of the mission, he could share the broader principles that had emerged from the experience. The most dangerous threats are often the ones hiding in plain sight, Webb would tell audiences of future military leaders. The enemy isn't always the obvious adversary. Sometimes it's the person you trust, the colleague you work with every day, or the quiet professional you've completely overlooked. The Naval Special Warfare Training Center had become a pilgrimage site for security professionals from around the world. The facility's transformation from a compromised installation to a model of operational security represented a masterclass in how institutions could learn from intelligence failures and emerge stronger. Lieutenant Commander Cross, now serving as the facility's Director of Training Innovation, had incorporated Sam's methods into a comprehensive curriculum that was being adopted by special operations units worldwide. She taught us that effective counterintelligence isn't just about detecting enemies. It's about understanding your own vulnerabilities and addressing them before they can be exploited. The psychological impact of Sam's mission extended far beyond the immediate personnel who had worked with her. Throughout the special operations community, her story had become a powerful reminder of the dedication and sacrifice required to protect America's most elite warriors. Dr. Quinn had published a classified psychological study on the mental discipline required for extended deep cover operations, using Sam's mission as a primary case study. The psychological requirements for this type of operation exceed those of most combat situations, she wrote. The operative must maintain perfect emotional control while enduring conditions that would break most individuals. Seaman recruit Fletcher, now Petty Officer Fletcher and serving as a SEAL team leader, had become one of the most effective advocates for treating all personnel with respect and professional courtesy. His transformation from arrogant bully to thoughtful leader was directly attributed to his experience with Sam. I learned that every person you encounter might be someone whose mission is protecting your life, Fletcher would tell new SEAL candidates during orientation. Treat everyone with the respect you'd want shown to someone who is risking everything to keep you safe. The facility's memorial wall had been expanded to include a section dedicated to silent guardians, personnel whose service couldn't be publicly acknowledged, but whose contributions were essential to national security. Chief Vargas, now leading the military's premier counterintelligence training division, had developed a comprehensive program based on the techniques Sam had used during her investigation. She showed us that effective counterintelligence requires patience, precision, and the ability to see patterns that others miss, he explained to his students. The international impact of Operation Silent Shield continued to unfold as other nations adapted the security measures developed in response to the intelligence penetration.
Allied military forces were implementing similar protocols to protect their own special operations capabilities from hostile intelligence services. But perhaps the most significant legacy was the cultural change that Sam's mission had inspired throughout the military community. The casual dismissal of support personnel, the assumption that civilian contractors were somehow less important than military personnel, and the tendency to overlook quiet professionals who didn't seek attention had been fundamentally challenged. She embodied everything we claim to value in military service, Captain Nash reflected during a memorial service for classified operations personnel. Duty, honor, country. Not just as words, but as principles lived authentically, even when no one was watching. The ripple effects of Sam's example extended into civilian leadership development programs, corporate security training, and academic studies of organizational behavior. Her demonstration that true leadership sometimes requires accepting unrecognition and enduring misunderstanding had become a powerful lesson for leaders in all fields.
Agent Morrison, now serving as Director of Counterintelligence Operations, often referenced Sam's mission when briefing senior government officials on intelligence threats. The operation demonstrated that our most effective defense against sophisticated adversaries is often the quiet professional who serves without expectation of recognition or reward. The technical innovations developed during Sam's investigation had been incorporated into standard counterintelligence procedures used by agencies worldwide. Her methods for detecting surveillance, identifying suspicious patterns, and conducting covert investigations had become foundational elements of modern intelligence training. Years later, when military historians were finally allowed to study the classified records of Operation Silent Shield, they would conclude that Sam's mission represented a turning point in how democratic societies defended themselves against intelligence threats. Her demonstration that patient, professional, dedicated service could overcome even the most sophisticated adversaries had become a model for future operations. The quiet woman who had spent 8 months collecting brass casings and enduring mockery while conducting one of the most important counterintelligence operations in modern history had left a legacy that would protect American lives for generations. Her story reminded everyone who learned about it that the greatest heroes are often the ones whose names we never know, whose sacrifices we never see, and whose service we can never adequately repay. In the end, Lieutenant Commander Samantha "Shadow" Blake had achieved something rarer than victory in battle or recognition for heroism. She had demonstrated that true honor lies not in seeking glory, but in serving faithfully, regardless of whether that service is ever acknowledged or understood. Her legacy lived on in every security protocol she had inspired, every life she had saved, and every quiet professional who followed her example of serving without expectation of recognition or reward. The greatest tribute to her service wasn't found in any medal or commendation, but in the simple fact that somewhere in the shadows, other quiet professionals were continuing her mission, protecting America's warriors while remaining invisible, serving their country while staying unrecognized, and proving every day that the most important heroes are often the ones whose names we never know, whose sacrifices we never see, and whose service we can never adequately repay. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.